This is the Compiz desktop cube with 3D windows, Expo mode, individual wallpapers on each desktop, the ring switcher, cover flow and more. We're going to see how to turn this on and set it up on Linux Mint 21.1. We're going to activate Compiz and go through some basic settings to get the cube, Expo and some other bits and pieces up and running. We're using Linux Mint 21.1 Xfce. It's almost the same for the Mate edition, but this does not work. It's not included in Cinnamon. So this is only for Xfce and Mate. And obviously I'm using Xfce here. I'm going to change the desktop background just to make it a little bit lighter. We begin by activating, and if we type desktop into the menu and go to desktop settings, we'll just change the window manager to Compiz. Screen flickers. Didn't do very much there, but sometimes it flickers a little bit more than that. On Mate, again type desktop settings, which you can also find in the control center. Desktop settings. Then we go to Windows and we change here the window manager to Compiz. Again, the screen flickers. And then you can get to Compiz settings from this button here or from CCSM in the menu. Now we can get to the Compiz settings manager through this button here. We can reset Compiz settings there, which I'll show later on. You can also get the Compiz settings in the menu by typing CCSM. You get a little warning, heed the warning. You can break things. I have broken things before. I don't expect to now. I've had a couple of test runs at this, so this should go okay. So now that we're running Compiz, I'll just log out and log back in. That seems to smooth things up a little bit. Log out. You don't have to, but I have noticed some of the settings are a little bit fuzzy. So I recommend logging out and logging back in. So now that we're running Compiz, we'll type CCSM into the menu. And there it is. We didn't get our warning because we ticked the little box not to warn us next time. We'll just start with general options and then desktop size. You can see it's set to 4 and 1, so you'll need 4 horizontal desktops and 1 vertical to get a cube. So if you're on a different distro and you're not getting the cube, make sure you've got 4 in there. Not touching anything else in the general section. Not touching anything in accessibility. So we're just going to dive straight into the settings. Now rotate cube and desktop cube are already enabled. So is Expo. If we enable the Viewport Switcher, we have to resolve the conflict and disable rotate to face 1. And now if I press the mouse wheel down on the desktop itself, mouse wheel down, and move the mouse around while holding the wheel down, we get the cube. So let's configure it up a little bit. It's pretty big. We'll go to rotate cube, zoom, we're going to crank this up to 0.6. And now if we have a look, the cube's a little bit more manageable in size. You can obviously go more or less, whatever you want to do there. And that's all we're going to touch in there. Desktop cube. Behavior. You can go inside the cube. It's a little bit weird, but there you go. That's inside the cube. I'll turn that back off. appearance. So we've got dark colors top and bottom, and you can select here and choose a different color if you want to change that. Transparent cube. I'll just put something else up on this desktop here. So we've got a terminal running there. We've got Compiz settings running here. Opacity during rotation. Let's turn this back to about 60. And now we can actually get a bit of a look through the cube, which is pretty handy if you're looking for a window. You can see there it is over there. And non-rotating opacity, well, if we crank this down to almost nothing, you can see the effect that happens there. These little X's out to the side reset the defaults. So let's reset this to 100. And it didn't take straight away. Most settings take straight away. Sometimes you just need to click out on the desktop with your mouse, just click, and that refreshes it. So now there's no transparency until you actually start rotating the cube. If we go back to appearance, you can actually have a skydome. So that's the color. You can see it's dark at the bottom and it's a little bit lighter as it goes up. If we deselect that, that's pretty much dark everywhere. So I'm going to leave that on. You can also put an image in there. So let's click there and browse. I've got some images in here. Let's just put this one in there. We have to enable JPEG. And now we get an image in the background. And you can animate that image. Pretty cool effect. As you rotate the cube, the image moves behind it. Again, I'm going to restore the defaults here. And down here, because we've got a skydome, the start color is the bottom, so you'll notice it's darker at the bottom than the top. So the end color, let's change the end color, which is the top. Let's just go for a bit of purple look here. And you can see it's dark at the bottom and then it becomes purple as it goes up. We'll just go back to that lighter color there again. Some of these, if you hit the X here, this will probably change color. I don't know why it does that. Somebody must have put some other color in there at some stage. But I have noticed that with some of these color bars. Anyway, I think we're done in there. So now we've got our cube and we can rotate it with the mouse. Expo, this is a pretty neat effect. It's activated. So the Expo key in the bindings is Control Alt up arrow. So that's Expo. Now, Compiz refers to these as viewports rather than workspaces or virtual desktops. However, I basically consider them, for all intents and purposes, more or less the same thing. So if we want to go to this workspace here or this desktop, we just click on it and there we go. Let's go back here. So that's the keyboard binding, that's the mouse binding, and this here is a screen. So let's choose a screen edge or corner. I'm going to choose the bottom right. I use the top left on my system, but because this is a virtual machine running on my system, there's my system running in the background. So I could move this virtual machine to another one of my desktops if I wanted to. And the only reason I'm choosing the bottom right is because it's going to clash if I have them both up in that top left corner. So let's run the mouse down into that bottom right corner. And there's Expo. You can hit escape or enter. So if I hit enter, we'll just come back to where we were. If I hit escape, we come back. Or we can bang the mouse down into that corner again. We can also use the arrow keys on the keyboard. left and right, and press enter if we want to go to that one there. Now the thing with the corner is they're very easy to hit. So unlike a billiard ball, if you hit a little bit above the corner, it's not going to bounce across to the other side. As long as you're heading in the general direction of the corner, you can hit that edge and then slide down until you activate it. Or if you hit too soon at the bottom and keep moving down into the corner, you're still going to hit it. So corners are a pretty good way to trigger an event like that. The way that I'm using Expo on my own system, it's primarily driven by the mouse. So for example here, if I want to change desktops, it's one swipe, one click, one hand, 1 second. So swipe, click, just with one hand. Pretty easy. Swipe, click, swipe, click. I prefer the top left, but as I say, I'm going to use the bottom right here. You can also have here tilt, which sort of runs off into the distance a bit. Or my favourite is curve. So the ends wrap around a little bit. We'll just increase the curve strength. And you'll be able to see that more graphically. We'll go up to about 6.5 there, something like that's usually fairly good. Just gives a nice little curve. See, we've got different distance on the end. So we changed this 64 into 24, and that seems to rectify that. Camera distance just pushes it further back. Camera distance just pushes it further back. Again, we'll go back to the default. You can hide the docks and panels. Change the brightness of the active and inactive viewports. So for example, see that one's fairly bright and the active one's quite a bit brighter. So you've got adjustments there. I won't bother. You can play with those once you get comfortable. Reflection, we've got reflection down the bottom, so we can turn that off. And now it's fairly dark. See, that's brought the edges right out to the edge of the screen here. Again, sometimes one setting plays on another. And there's the reflection back, and we've got our end gaps again. There is also the viewport distance. So between them, you can just see a very small gap between those two viewports or desktops. If we increase the viewport distance, that just separates those four panels out a little bit further. There you can see there's a little bit bigger gap. That's what that setting does there. That pretty much covers Expo. That's pretty much covered the... Oh no, we've got... So show desktop, let's put another application up here. And you've got the show desktop button here near the menu, which does that. We can select show desktop here in Compiz, and we get a slightly different effect. You see they take off to the corners, and you can just see the edges of them up there in the corners. And we can see it's activated because it's highlighted in blue. And then they come back. Turn that off. You can also have fade to desktop. And now if we hit this, they just fade into the desktop. And it's either fade to desktop or show desktop. They're obviously going to clash with each other, so you can have one or the other there. But I'm just going to leave it with the default. Let's move along a little bit further. We come to the effects category. So I'm not touching all the other things here. The desktop wall doesn't work with the cube. It's either one or the other. I'm not going through all the settings, just enough to get Compiz up and running, the cube, Expo, some 3D windows and some other effects. Let's have a quick look at animations. Now there's little arrows up the top, so you can see we've got these tabs. And there's this arrow up here. There's more tabs over there. Or we can hit the tab to come back. Or if you really want to, you can actually just resize this and you can see all the tabs at once. If you want to have effects when you minimize, restore, open and close applications, I recommend here. So the far right tab, effect setting, random animations for all events. If you want some fancy stuff going on, just select that and you'll get different effects when you open applications and close them. It might take a moment before it starts doing anything fancy. Let's just drag these down a bit. And now if we minimize them, there we go, we're getting some different effects. Restore and minimize, you're going to get all sorts of crazy stuff going on there. So that's random animations for all events. I'll be doing a more advanced video at a later date on these specific settings here and getting particular events for certain actions, for opening, for closing, minimizing and unminimizing, etc. But that gives you enough to get a bit of fancy stuff going for now. Speaking of fancy, let's go to 3D windows. So if we turn this side on, you can see that window is just flat on the side of the cube, or the terminal is flat on that side. Let's select 3D windows, and now you can see that they're standing out away from the actual cube itself. So let's go in here and have a look at some of the settings. There's a minimum cube size and a window space. So if we open another window here, you can see they have some distance between them there. If we increase the window space, they come out a bit further. And if we make the cube smaller, let's take that down to 30 or so. And now you'll see that the cube is quite a bit smaller and the windows are way out in the distance. These will sort of play off each other, and depending on how many windows you've got open on each desktop and so forth. But that's what the settings do. Again, I'm just going to restore the defaults here. Most of the defaults are fairly sane, or I find that they are at least. Now the window depth, if we turn sideways again, you can see how thick they are. And if we increase the window depth, let's take the window depth up to 1. I think that's the maximum. And now if we turn side on, you can see they're quite a bit thicker. We can have colours, so the active window, which is this one at the moment, let's make this a green colour. And the inactive will make a red colour. And now this one should be green and that one should be red. And now if I click on this one, it's now the active window, so it'll be green and the other one red. And I think also the green one comes to the front there as well. This one should be the furthest one out now, and there it is. You can bevel the corners. There's a couple of those already selected there. We're not going to get into that. I'm going to leave that where it is there at the moment. So that's 3D windows. Cube reflection and deformation. You can see there's no reflection down the bottom. It's pretty black. So if we select this, we've got reflection down the bottom. The cube's also gone to a cylinder. You can see those windows are curved. We'll go in and have a look at some of the settings. We'll start with deformation. You see it's set to a cylinder. You can also have a sphere, which gives that effect. However, I prefer none, and that'll give us our cube back. And you can see we've got the reflection down there. We've also got that cap in the top And the bottom there, we'll deal with that in a moment. Go to Cube Caps. So these are the caps. These are the caps here, Fusion Cap PNG. So if we go New, and then we browse, I'll just go to Pictures. I've got some random pictures there. We'll go for this ocean one again. Close, and then we click on it, and we push it up, or we click on the other one and push it down. It reads the one that's at the top of the list. So if we have a look now, we should have the ocean in the top there, and we'll still have that other thing down the bottom. In behavior, draw top face and bottom face. If we deselect those, there's no images, and we've just got a hollow cube. So let's move to reflection. Again, we've got ground color near and far. So near is the bottom, far is the top. So we've still got that horizontal line through the middle of the screen. I'm pretty sure if we increase the reflection ground size, just take it up to 1, and we'll do the same with the intensity. And we'll just click on the desktop, and now let's have a look. There we go. We'll have a quick look at wobbly windows, so let's select that. We have to disable snapping windows. And now we should have wobbly windows. Okay, so my virtual machine's glitching out a little bit. And so now we have wobbly windows, and if we go into the settings, these two seem to be the main two here, friction and spring. So let's have a look. That's how much it wobbles there at the moment. If we wind these down, I don't want to go that low. So I'll crank those settings down, and you can see it's sort of a lot zippier now. And see that's still wobbling a little bit there. But yeah, if you go too low on these settings, it doesn't take much for it to start wobbling. If you give that a good shake with the mouse, it might take a minute or so to come back. In fact, I'll just do it. So that's the effect there, and I can actually zing that right off onto another screen, and there it is there. It's moved over onto the next desktop. And as you can see, that's still wobbling now. There we go, it's finally settled down. So we'll just restore the defaults. Friction and spring are the main two there. Okay, so let's go back. That's wobbly windows. Not touching anything in there at the moment. Not touching any of the extras, image loading. There's text there. You'll see that gets enabled. We'll do something down here in a minute and text will automatically get enabled. Utility, we'll do wallpaper. So let's select wallpaper. I think that wallpaper will probably disappear there in a moment. And we're going to go new. There we go. It's just refreshed itself. There's no wallpapers in there, so it's just gone black. And we're going to browse into pictures, and I'll just start. I've got some images in here. So now we've got one image in there, and there it is. Let's do 3 more. And now you'll see you get 2 and 2. Do another one. And if you've got 8 or 10 or 20 different wallpapers, you can actually cycle between them, which we'll get to in a moment. I'll just load the rest of these in. There we go. So we've now got 4 wallpapers in there, and you get different wallpaper on each screen or each desktop. Now you can cycle the wallpapers, and at the moment it's set for 10 minutes. So if we change that to 0.1, and we'll just zoom out, you see them shuffle across. So we've got the ocean over here. There they go, they've just shuffled across. So as I say, if you've got 10 or 20 or whatever, however many images you've got that you want to load into there, there it goes again, you can do that. So I'm going to turn that back off and unenable it. So we're just going to use standard wallpaper, but that's wallpaper, and you can have a different wallpaper on each desktop and you can shuffle them. And down the very bottom, some of these are selected by default. So move window and resize. If you deselect move window, you can't move the window anymore. And the same with resize. You get the resizer, but you can't actually resize. So you most probably want those. Workspace naming, let's enable that. Now see here it says enable text. So if we scroll back up, we see text is now enabled. Let's go into Workspace Naming, and if we double click it, and we can rename that. We'll call it Video. So this is Workspace or Viewport 1. We're on Viewport 2 at the moment. There it is, Video. And this should say Viewport 2. Okay, so you can rename those if you want to do that. I'm going to disable that again. Scale, this one's interesting. We'll open another application here, and we'll put something over on this other desktop as well. So we've got 2 apps here and 1 over there. We'll go into Scale, and we'll go to Bindings, and again you can have a screen edge, keyboard shortcut, or a mouse activated event, but this is just for the current workspace, just for this desktop. But these settings here are for the current workspace, so whether you're on this workspace or that one, they only work for that current workspace. But down here, this is for all windows, so for all workspaces, and this is the one I'm going to take. And I'm going to use a screen corner edge. I'm going to select a corner. I'm going to use the bottom left. As I say, the menu's there. You probably don't want to do that, but nonetheless, this should show all these 2 here, and the terminal. Everything should show up here in a moment. And if I click on the terminal, which is on the next workspace, it'll actually take us over to that workspace as well. So that's Scale. I'm going to disable it again. Go back. And not touching any of those. Grid, it's enabled. I'll show you what it does. So if you hold down Control, Alt, and here PK5, that's keypad 5. So if I press hold Control Alt and press 5 on the keypad, it does that. Control Alt 1 goes to that corner, 4 goes to that edge, 7. So it's pretty much 8 across the top. It basically follows your keypad around. That's 6. 3 will be the bottom right, 2's across the bottom, 1's the bottom left. And if I now select this one over here, make that the active window, Control Alt 3 will put it in the bottom corner. And when you move them, they sort of resize back to what they were before. So that's Enable Grid. As I said, that was turned on. I'm actually going to turn it off. Place windows. So if we start an app, you'll see everything starting up in that top left-hand corner there. So let's select Place Windows and go in and have a look. It's on Smart. So I'm going to put this over here. And let's start this now. And if we start the terminal, so it's being smart, it's sort of putting it where there's not something already. And you've got some other events in there, cascade, random, under the pointer. But we'll just leave that on smart. You can figure most of that out pretty easily, I think. The ring switcher, let's enable that and have a look at it. And I'll put up something on this desktop. We've got something there. Let's put calculator or something up here. So we've pretty much got something on every desktop, I think. We'll put something on this desktop as well. As the task manager will do. And now with the ring switcher, now same thing here. We can have a keyboard, mouse. These are the bindings, and this is only for the current workspace. So just for these two apps, because that's all we've got running here. But here we see it's all workspaces, and we see it's Alt Super Tab. So let's go Alt Super Tab, and then if I hit Tab again, they cycle around. And the one that's selected is the one at the bottom. So let's take the calculator. That takes us to the calculator. Alt Super Tab. That should take us to the task manager. Alt Super Tab. And back to Compiz settings. And if we go to general options, allow mouse selection. We'll select that. Alt Super Tab. And now I can select with the mouse. So if I want the terminal, I'll just click on it. Alt Super Tab, the file manager. So allow mouse selection, the ring appearance. You've got some settings in there for the width and height, etc. Let's go to the display, show window title, Alt Super Tab. You can see it's showing the title in the middle of the screen. And obviously if you deselect that, Alt Super Tab, there's nothing there. Leave that on, and there's some timings and other stuff in there as well. So once again, all workspaces is for all the applications that are running on the system. And I think if we minimize, let's just minimize a couple of these. I think their icon shows up. Yeah, so they're just the icon. Whereas with the other ones, we're actually getting a preview of the application. And if we go to this one here, it'll take us, we'll go to the task manager. It'll take us to the task manager, which is currently minimized, and it'll actually restore it up onto the screen. And now if we go back, Alt Super Tab, there's the task manager. You can also see they're showing an emblem in the bottom corner. So there's probably a setting there. Where's the setting? Oh, there'll be one in there probably to show an emblem. There we are, emblem. You can have big. So now they've got a big emblem right in the middle of them. Or you can have none. No emblem at all. That pretty much covers the ring switcher. I'm going to turn it back off. And the shift switcher, and we'll go and have a look at the settings. And I'm going to use a screen edge again for this one, and all spaces, so all the desktops. So initiate screen corner, so let's choose the bottom left. Now we selected the bottom left before for scale, but because I turned scale back off, it's not conflicting. So now if I run the mouse down in that bottom left corner, that's the shift switcher. And I roll the mouse, run the mouse down and then roll the mouse wheel. Or I can roll the mouse wheel the other way. And obviously the one in the center comes back to you when you click the mouse or press enter. And if we have a look at, there's just some, I'm not going to go through everything there. Same thing, you can have the emblem, reflection settings. See we've got reflection down the bottom. So we turn the reflection off. And now we're just seeing the wallpaper. Shift mode. So this is cover. This is called cover flow. There's also flip, which does a different effect. So that's rolling the mouse wheel one direction and then the other. So here we've got some settings for flip. So it's on 30. So the flip angle is, say, 30 degrees. If I make that minus 30, now they'll flip out to the right instead of, whoops, now they'll go out to the right hand side. Or if I made that 90, I don't think I've tried this before. Yeah, you can see they're on quite an angle there. So now it's back to 30, the default, so they'll go off to the left again now. And the same, if you go back to cover, there's some settings here for cover. So the cover angle's 30. So you can see those ones on the side are about 30 degrees. If we make this, I think 0, I don't know if we can we have 0? Let's have a look. You can see it's sort of like shuffling a deck of cards there now. They're all pretty much flat on the screen. And if we restore 60, they've got a bit of angle on them left and right. And same thing, you could probably go up to 90 there. And now they're razor blade sharp on the edges. But again, as I say, 60 is about the right angle, a fairly safe and sane default. So that's cover there and flip there, cover and flip there. And I'm going to turn that back off and we'll go back. That's pretty much about all I'm going to do with Compiz in this video. I did mention at the start, you can reset Compiz settings. So for example, we chose the Viewport Switcher, we selected that, but these three were already selected. However, if we go back into Rotate Cube, we chose this 6 here, 0.6 for the cube size. So let's just go back and let's open up that desktop app again. So the desktop settings. So what will happen now, I'm going to reset Compiz settings. So that'll deactivate this one and some of these other ones that we might have changed along the way. So the 3D windows and the cube reflection, we selected those. This one was already selected. So let's reset Compiz settings. We'll close out of there. Let's start the settings manager again. So we get the warning again. And now if we scroll down a little bit, you see the Viewport Switcher's deselected, so is 3D windows and cube reflection. However, if we go into the settings here, the 0.6 is still present, and all our settings that we did in here for the cube reflection are still there. There's our picture and our reflection settings, deformation set to none, that sort of thing. So it doesn't change the settings you do within each one of these little modules. It just deselects them. So if I reselect that, and these other ones here, we should be pretty much back to how we configured the system a little while ago. So that's a quick look at Compiz Settings Manager, activating Compiz and getting a few fancy effects going. We've got our cube, Expo, and we've played with the wallpapers and a few other bits and pieces. Hopefully that will get you going on your Compiz journey.